So, good evening, everybody.
Hello there. Good to see you all online for a half an hour webinar.
So, a hearty welcome to everybody. We've got quite a global audience. First of all, also a very hearty welcome to those people from the PMI, especially the PMI Germany chapter, with whom we are also running this together. And other than that, thanks to Mark, who's going to be running this for us. I'm going off the screen now. You will find me in the chat, so whoever wants to say something in the chat, feel free. But other than that, without further ado, Mark, all yours.
Good. Thank you, Matthias. So half an hour is not really a lot of time, which means we have to go very, very fast. So let me start with a statement that's probably going to be well known to virtually everybody out there who's running projects, and that is we all want our projects to run faster, to deliver more projects, and to actually make more money through these projects. So essentially have more benefits from those projects. And we've been trying to do that for ages, and it is a constant battle. And now suddenly we have AI. And well, who doesn't know AI? The savior, the opportunity to optimize everything. And there's also quite a lot of excitement about the application of AI in project management scenarios. So many people are playing with AI, including Matthias and myself. We have been investing deeply in utilizing AI through our business, not only in the last couple of months, but the last 3 years already. So we've developed stuff, we've done stuff, and I must say we have achieved good results. But in many project organizations, even though AI is being utilized quite a lot, the results are still not there. And people are asking, why not? So today I want to give you an idea as to what the potential reasons could be why we're not seeing the results that we expect. I mean, if everybody is more productive, then surely our projects have to get done faster, and we should have more projects being completed, etc. But that is not materializing. So to answer this question, I'm going to utilize a tool that we've developed, incidentally using AI. We call it the Flow Simulator. And this gives me an opportunity to essentially show you the things that good, well-running project organizations are doing to accelerate their project portfolios. And then right at the end, I'm going to circle back and ask a few questions about, okay, where do you think AI could actually have made a difference? But first, let us have a look as to what are the proven best practices for accelerating project portfolios. Now, I mentioned the Flow Simulator. You'll also see the URL of the Flow Simulator currently on my screen. Matthias is going to share it also in the chat window. You can register an account, log in, it's completely free, and essentially do everything that I'm going to do today, plus so much more on your own to answer those questions. Okay, what would happen if I do the following? What would happen if I change this, that, etc.? So I'm going to log in quickly. I obviously already have an account. Going to log in into the Flow simulation, and I'm going into the guided mode tour. In fact, I have to go to the first step of the guided mode tour, which means I only see a few things currently on the screen. And I need to do a little bit of explaining. So essentially, we are going to simulate an environment, an industrial organization who runs quite a lot of manufacturing plants, and those plants have to be maintained. So the person who's actually running the simulation is the project manager, project coordinator, portfolio manager, however you want to call that person. And we are going to run the simulation through the eyes of that individual. Now, you might look at this and say, well, we are not running like that. That may be true. So it's a very specific workflow. But even so, I want to just ask you to suspend disbelief a little bit and just go with the flow, because I can guarantee you that if you really look at this, then you will agree that virtually all project environments can be arranged in a flow that I'm going to show and visualize on the screen. So when we come to an organization, we're asked to help in improving the situation. There are a couple of things that we do, but one of the most important things is that we try and visualize very early the work that needs to be done, as well as the workflow this work has to go through until it's completed. So what do I mean by that? On this screen, you see a Kanban board. You see lots of colors, but on the left-hand side, we start with all the projects. So very common in organizations that have not really adopted a more agile way of working is there's yearly planning, and they have a fairly good idea of what the work is they need to do. Now, each one of those items is a particular work item, and of a certain complexity, requiring the teams to work together to get the work done. And then you see the workflow this particular work item had to go through from the left on the screen right to the right edge of the screen, which is called done. So from ideas to done, and these items have to go through those individual columns where different teams are working on them. So the colors denote different teams. While I'm talking, I'm going to just put the simulation on play in the background, which is going to simulate how these 4 teams, so the asset management team, who are the blue columns, the orange team, the engineers, the yellow team are the purchasing department, the assembly team, they are the purple colored columns, and how they work together over the year to get these projects done. Now, as I said, each one of those projects has certain requirements. So there was some pre-planning. They have an idea as to what is required. Essentially, they estimated the amount of effort needed. And we are now seeing this simulation going through an entire year. So we are currently at day 82 of the year. These are working days. That is week 18. We're going to count up to week 52. And we are seeing how these projects get completed. Now, each one of those cards, if I just open an arbitrary card, has a lot more detail behind it. So one of them is how much capacity is required from the individual teams. We see subtasks are being completed. And we see also the people who are working on these subtasks. We'll also see that some of these cards are blocked. So here, for example, we see a card that is blocked. This particular blocker is a planned waiting state, as you would expect in a purchasing department. They have to reach out to suppliers, they have to finalize contracts, and it always takes time where they have to wait and can't do anything. Some other cards are blocked because of employees not available. So every time you see a red block appearing on one of the cards, people can't continue working on it. Apart from that, all of the projects are slowly but surely moving to the right of the system. Sometimes we see queues building as people are working together. Now, I could tell you a lot more about these projects. I could also go a little bit deeper into the individual projects, but that is not the point of the simulation. The simulation is supposed to work on a very high level and abstract all the details that confuse us very often when we are dealing with project as a project coordination or portfolio lead. So it is enough for us to know that there are different types of work. So some of those are maintenance projects, they jump certain columns. Some of them are software projects. Some of them are big projects. You see these brown ones, they are really big projects. If you go into the detail, there are lots of tasks that are going to be completed. And of course, there are 10 different individuals working in these teams. This is really all that we need to know. Now that we've run it for a full year, we can actually ask ourselves, okay, well, what have we seen that actually transpired over the course of the year? And if you paid very close attention, you would have seen that some columns had a lot of cards in it. So for example, currently at the last day of the year, we have 45 items in the busy column of the assembly team. They're trying to multitask like tremendously. There are only a few people working there and the work is piling up. We also see some teams, like the asset management team, they don't really have any work to pull from because everything has started at the end of the year. Now, in real project scenarios, we obviously wouldn't run an entire year without making any changes. We would, as soon as we start seeing certain problems materializing, we would make changes. But that can take weeks, months, sometimes longer to actually get clarity on what you can do. Now, the beauty with the simulation is we can play around and experiment and see what is happening. Now, one of the first things that we usually have to do in this scenario is we have to restrict our work in progress limit. And in order to argue this, when you don't have a simulation or perhaps somebody that has experience in applying these sort of tools to a project portfolio, it's very, very difficult to get started. So the nice thing with the simulation is we can look and evaluate the metrics behind the simulation and try and understand what gives rise to certain bad behavior. So the visualization gives us a view, and we now, because we have a simulation that is run for a full year, we have a couple of flow metrics that we can look at. And I'm going to specifically focus on 2 of them and also to compare them in successive runs of the simulation to just get a feeling for what has changed when we are changing some things. So some of the policies of how we work together. Now, this cumulative flow diagram is a very interesting and very expressive chart that tells us so much about what is happening in a system. So for each week, or in this particular instance, even for each day of the simulation over the course of a year, we see exactly how many items were in each column across the entire Kanban board. So for example, we see here in week 48, on the green side, we had 57 items in done. So 57 of the projects were completed. And then we have a number of projects in various states of completion. Okay, we can also see right in the beginning, we had, here it's now in week 20, we had 19 projects in done. And again, the projects actually divide across the different columns. Now, something that's very interesting is we have these lines here at the bottom. The one says 1.18. It's a tangent to the completion rate. It tells us effectively that this team or this team of teams can complete about 1.2 projects per week. That is their capacity. And we'll also see that they've started about 5 projects per week. This is what this other graph tells us. And this is the reason why we have so much work accumulating in progress until we've actually pulled everything under that we could pull in. And then we start working it off until we have some projects left at the end of the year. When we go back to the Kanban board, we can also just count this number, and we realize that out of the 150 projects that we could have completed in a year, we only completed 64, and there is still a lot of work remaining. So one other thing that we get from the flow metrics is also how long it is taking to complete those projects. And on the cycle time scatter plot, again, I'm going to enlarge this. It shows us again for every week of the simulation, how many projects did complete in that particular week, and then how long 85% of them took to complete. So this is this dark black line. It tells us essentially that most of the projects are taking longer and longer to complete, and we don't really have an idea as to how long the projects are still going to take to complete. So essentially what that means is somebody came to us and said, okay, well, give me an estimate as to how long something is going to take. The honest answer we would have to tell that person, say, we have no idea, because this line has not yet settled. We have not yet reached a point where it comes to 30, 35, 40 weeks when we say that most of the projects actually finish below that time. We don't really know. It may even be longer than a year. Good. Those are the flow metrics. Let's look at timeliness. Timeliness is a very simple chart looking at the priorities of the individual projects. We have 4 different types of priority, or we call them service classes in Kanban, where the most important priority class that we have in this simulation is a so-called fixed date. Fixed date meaning you cannot be late. There's some sort of regulation that says you have to finish on that date, or perhaps in a market event, some sort of customer needs something at a particular date. These are the fixed date projects, and over the course of the year, we see that our on-time ratio is getting worse and worse until at the end of the year, we're ending a scenario where we say out of the 28 projects which we had to complete on time, only 10% were completed. That is bad. Okay, now how does it look in terms of value generated? This is the last graph that I'm going to show you, and then we're going to run a few simulations to try and improve our scenarios. So on this, again, on the x-axis, we see the number of weeks in a year, and we now have three different lines. The orange line tells us the value that we have estimated the projects that the projects will bring to us once completed. But we are calculating this value essentially when projects have started. So at week 15, we have started projects which are supposed to give us about 1.7 million euros in value when they're completed. Now, this value doesn't accrue until the project is completed, which is what the green line is for. And we now track how many projects have completed and what the estimated value was. And as soon as the project is completed, we attain this value. So even though the project may not have delivered the value itself, it says, if we expect this project to deliver 100,000 over the course of the year, we're going to see that value reflected in the green line as soon as the project finishes. So obviously there's a very, very big gap between the work started and the work completed, and we want to close in. Even more interesting is that blue line. Blue line says, well, even if a project is completed, we're not going to get the value right away. So it will take some time. In this case, we're amortizing across 12 months, meaning that at the end of the year, we have a cash flow of only 300,000 euros compared to 3 million euros of work started. So essentially 1/10 of the work was completed. Okay, so if we now want to improve this scenario, we have many different options. And unfortunately, most project people would go into specifics on individual projects and meetings, etc. But I want to introduce you to a few changes that we usually make quite early in such a transformation. And one of the first ones that we argue very, very hard for, and I have to admit it's very difficult to get that actually enacted, is to apply a work in progress limit. So essentially, the only change we make in such a scenario, so I'm going to rewind again to the beginning and apply this apply the work in progress limit. And now you see we've applied a work in progress limit of 50 on the projects that can be in progress. No other changes. And now I'm going to run the simulation again. In fact, this time I'm going to run the simulation very, very fast. So it's just going to switch through. That's the beauty of running a simulation. And already we can start seeing something different, which is that at no time are there too many items in any particular part of the workflow. We'll also see, if you can remember the last time, we had 61 projects completed. Now we have 83 projects completed. We also notice that there are quite a lot of projects which we have not started. And at first glance, that looks bad. And this, by the way, is one of the reasons why people are so scared to apply work in progress limits, because they would have to tell some people, well, we cannot start your project now. There's immense pressure to start everything as soon as it comes in. But let's have a look at what it did to our flow metrics. Okay, now we have the same flow metrics that we had last time, but we are comparing the two scenarios. On the left-hand side, we have the first scenario, so that those are the same flow metrics that you just now saw. On the right-hand side, we see the flow metrics for the second scenario where we applied the work in progress limit, so one change. And immediately you can see a major change on the cumulative flow diagram. And that is that the amount of work in progress is staying constant. And you have to ask yourself, what is it doing to the people working in the system? Instead of here after week 30, where they have to work with 120 items, somehow juggle all those balls, working with 40 items at the same time. Obviously, people are going to feel a lot less stressed. So I'm going to skip the others, going to the cycle time, and immediately we can now see that this, what I was referring to last time, is starting to work. We are coming to the point where we can actually start giving some estimates as to how long projects in general take to get completed, because our line is starting to flatten out. Good. What has happened to the timeliness of the projects? Well, left, that was the first one. Right, that was after we applied the work in progress limit. And unfortunately, no change whatsoever. We have completed some projects which are so-called in service class intangible. But apart from that, the project that we wanted to complete, the orange, essentially the fixed state projects, we still have very, very bad completion data. In fact, it even looks worse, but that's in the margin of error in the simulation. What has happened on the financial front? Okay, now we started much less. But look at what happened on the green line. We actually completed a lot more work. That jumped from 60 projects to 80 projects. And because we completed more projects, we generated more money. And the realized benefits also jumped. So instead of having 13,000 euros per week generated cash flow, we now have 19,000 euros per week generated cash flow. So everything we looked at either improved or stayed the same. The only thing which actually got worse was on the Kanban board, there were some projects which had not yet started. Okay, that's the first major change. We have shown how we make more money, how it's getting faster. But what else could we be doing? Specifically, how could we improve the timeliness and actually get more of the fixed state projects on time? Well, let's start focusing on that. And because we have a Kanban board, it's actually also not that difficult to do. We see all the projects as they go through the system. If we apply some more discipline to make sure that we actually focus on completing stuff and not just starting, we should be able to see a lot more results. So we're adding a few priority rules and run the simulation again. I'm going to do that even faster. I'm just going to drag it through. And we pretty much end in a similar scenario. The same number of projects completed as before, the same number of projects not started as before, which means the flow metrics now also would not really look very different. So the same work in progress limit is being applied. It even looks the same in cycle time, but let's have a look at the timeliness now. Because everybody's now focusing more strictly on working on the right projects at the right time. Isn't this beautiful? So the fixed state projects, 90% of the 29 projects are now completed on time. The others, well, we can only do so much. And if we have to prioritize, then obviously we need to prioritize on what has to be finished at a certain date and time. Let's have a look at the financial impact. And here we see a slight increase again, more work completed, 1.339, so about 100,000 euros more. The realized benefits have climbed even a little further. Okay, so those were two changes now. On the one side, we applied a work in progress limit. Then we focused more on prioritizing, making sure we work on the right type of work. And I wanted to go one step further and introduce yet one more change, essentially a third change. And this is that the teams can help each other. Now, what does it mean? Instead of individuals on the Kanban board, we now allow the individuals in the engineering team to help each other if a project demands it. So if there's a higher priority project and a colleague needs help, we can help, and that's a full efficiency. We'll also allow the teams to help each other. But if an asset manager helps an engineer, they only do that at half the efficiency. So essentially, they lose efficiency when they help somebody, but sometimes that is just required. So when we again run through the simulation, going very, very fast, now we see a scenario that we've actually finished a lot more projects. We have almost started all projects, only 3 projects which we haven't started. That is cool. Looking at the flow metrics, we see that our throughput has increased dramatically now from the first state, so 1.18 projects per week. We're now essentially doubling in this scenario. We can see our cycle time is starting to even out at around 28 weeks. Looking at the timeliness, so here's the fourth scenario at the bottom. Every single project that had to finish on time is now finishing on time. Awesome. What is it doing to our financials? And again, we see a significant jump from the previous scenario. And if we just compare this last one after the 3 changes, work in progress changes, more focus on prioritization and people working as a team and not as individuals. And we have doubled the completed work in both of these. So in the green, the entire project portfolio, as well as the cash flow generated, in fact, more than doubled, which is significant. So these are the changes that we normally do. And I now want to take you back to that initial first state and ask you, okay, if we are running like this and we don't have a work in progress limit applied, so let me just go to the first step again. We don't have a work in progress limit applied. And now we start applying AI. What do you think would happen? So let's step this through. Let's, for example, say the asset management team starts using AI. Now, when we're looking at what the asset management team is doing, that's the first blue column, and they also have a responsibility at the end, but not just asset management, the entire team has responsibility there. I would just see what they are working on and how often queue is piling up for asset managers. And essentially never. So what happened if asset managers are using AI a lot more? Well, they get more work done. They actually see that as a signal they can start more projects. And there will probably be more projects started and pushed into the system. But when you think back at what the first thing was that we did is we actually reduced the number of active projects in order to get a significant improvement. Here we are going against that. So AI is actually incentivizing us to do the one thing we should not be doing, and that is to start even more. Okay, so if it's not the asset management team, let's now imagine a scenario where every single team was starting to use AI. Every single team, so the asset manager, the engineers, the purchasing, etc. Would that have improved the scenario? Well, it might have. But if you think back again to where the actual problem is and where the biggest queues are building, we see at the end, we have a massive queue in assembly. Okay? So this is definitely part of the biggest bottleneck in the environment. Now, if you think about what the assembly team does, these are the people who have to actually do the construction, make sure that the plant is shut down, etc. How much can AI really help in that scenario? Well, not really that much because it's physical. Perhaps at some stage the robots will come and we are going to be able to speed that up. But it's not going to make a significant difference because they are constraining the entire system. In addition, I have not really spoken about it. Do you see all these black columns? Those are waiting columns. This is where these projects have to wait for some sort of authorization, some sort of premium coming together. They're waiting for deliverables. You have to wait for the contractors to get some work done. So none of these black columns are going to be actually significantly faster because of AI, because they're just certain routines that we have implemented deeply in our organization, and we have to tackle these in order to get the benefit. So bottom line is, if we do not first do these other things that we spoke about, reduce the number of active projects in the system and make sure that it cannot grow beyond the capacity of the system, if we do not focus on prioritization, if we do not actually start working as a team instead of a lot of individuals, then every single time we are going to introduce AI, it is going to optimize a particular piece of the entire workflow, which is called local optimization, which will generally lead to a lot worse outcomes for the entire system. And if we want to improve the system, get more money from the system, have projects complete faster, etc., that's the last thing we want to do. So if you have been with me through all of these steps, and probably the last thing that you are going to ask yourself is, well, does this apply to us? Is our situation, our company in the same sort of scenario? And because of that, we offer you to go through your particular scenario and ask the real questions. I mean, are you really different from what we are showing in the simulation? Or do the same lessons also apply to you? Well, that was now a very, very fast tour through a very interesting topic. I hope I've given you something to think about before we just believe that AI is going to be the answer to everything. And yeah, if there are any questions, you know where to contact us.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks, Mark. And thanks to everybody for being here. We wish you a good evening. And I don't think there was anybody from the US here, so it's no good mornings. But a good evening, a good night, and we'll see you soon. And you know where to reach out to us. I'll also send you an email tomorrow or the day after.
Yeah,
there is somebody from the US. Oh, awesome. Hey, Dave. Thank you very much.
So good morning to you.
Good morning to you, yes.
Have a great day still, great morning. Bye.
Bye then.